NECTAR is the new album from singer-songwriter / producer Joji, or Joji Miller, formerly Filthy Frank / Pink Guy, coming, I think, 2 years after the release of his last album, Ballads 1. Ballads 1 marked the first ever project released under the Joji name, with the previous year's project, Pink Season, coming under the surreal Pink Guy moniker. Ballads 1 was characterized by seamlessly meshing together the sounds of lo-fi music, trap, R&B and hip-hop, and down-tempo music as well, in the context of love ballads. This new album, for the most part, does follow that same kind of formula, albeit with some extra room for Joji to explore some other subgenres like electronic music and even house music. This new album is almost 20 minutes longer than the previous album, I think, which is definitely felt in the track list when you're listening to it, and I think that has its pros and its cons, but I think one of the strongest aspects to this album and all of Joji's previous music is a commitment to a sound and an aesthetic. Something you always expect from Joji releases is very, very moody, down-tempo, but lush production with his idiosyncratic, very dramatic way of telling a story. What he also has is a very, very good ear for very infectious and catchy hooks and melodies. The song TikTok, which is one of the earlier songs in the track list, its instrumental kind of reminds me of something from Pink Season, but with a more dramatic and serious and down-tempo flair to it. This is just one of the many examples of his ear for very simple but catchy melodies in a darker setting. What he does all over the album is he builds and draws from sounds that he's known for and that he's comfortable in, which is apparent in the album's opener, which is Ew. Ew is built around these very, very dramatic and grand orchestral arrangements with that dark signature lo-fi twist to them. The kind of strained falsetto that he's singing in throughout a large portion of the song adds to its unsettling and eerie nature, which is a song essentially just about heartbreak. Stylistically, I think a song like this lends itself to the kind of music that The Weeknd was dropping a few years back, but with Joji's originality and sound still firmly intact. Song Sanctuary, which was a single that dropped, I think, quite a while back. Again, it's another amalgamation of styles with some hip-hop, some lo-fi, some trap in there as well. The song High Hopes has one of the more unique and interesting instrumentals to me. It sounds quite a lot like the kind of music that Shlomo was making a few years ago. It's quintessential lo-fi music, and this is Joji's most well-known sound, and it's essentially his bag, but you can clearly see why he excels in this kind of sound. The Omar Apollo feature was interesting to me as well, just for the fact that at times he sounded like 3 different people in the same verse. There's all of these tunes, like the ones I've just mentioned, that Joji fans will recognize as Joji's sound, and they will find some comfort in that. But what I like about this album is that there is still a lot of room for experimentation and trying to move his sound forward. Another one of the singles that dropped, which is Run, I think that it comes at a point in the track list where it breaks up some of the monotony in the track list, and it opens with these kind of, I want to say, like Nirvana-inspired guitar lines, and Joji singing in a vocal inflection that I've really never heard him singing before. It's essentially if grunge music went lo-fi hip-hop, but it kind of strangely works for me. I think his vocal performance on this specific song is one of the more dynamic and interesting performances on the whole album. I completely understand why this is a single, although it might be a risk because it's not the traditional associated Joji sound, but it's a clear statement of intent that he's willing to try new things and he's trying to evolve his sound further. The entire song is moody and down-tempo and eerie as usual, as you would find with a typical Joji track, but it's got that added scope and grandeur that some of the other tracks lack. 777 is one of the more electronic synth-heavy tunes on here. Again, this doesn't sound like it would be out of place on The Weeknd's After Hours project that dropped just a few months ago. It's Joji's strange, unique, idiosyncratic take on essentially 80s synth pop. Reanimator is another synth-heavy, 80s-inspired song, although it's a lot more dark and brooding and monstrous than 777. It's co-produced by Yves Tamor. It's definitely one of the more patient and ethereal and unique instrumentals on the entire project. To me, this song and a couple of the other songs on the album sound like a darker take on traditional house music. The only real drawback I have with this album is that there's just a handful of songs, a chunk of songs that just kind of melt into the background of far more interesting songs in the track list. Songs like Daylight or Gimme Love or Pretty Boy, these are all very, very lushly and intricately produced songs, but they sound like less fleshed out versions of other songs on the album. However, there are, of course, some amazing standout tracks on here. There's no doubt about that. The second track, Modus, continues that moody down-tempo aesthetic and his fusion of hip-hop and R&B. But what I like most about the song is the songwriting. I love how he's able to vividly encapsulate his overbearing anxieties. The song Normal People is built on a beautiful but very cute and small piano melody up against this massive growling humming bass. What works so well for me in this specific song is the silences in the song and how they complement the contrasting aspects of the instrumental. For me, Normal People is one of, if not the best song on the album. The vocal performance, the vulnerability, the imagery in the instrumental, everything for me is just, it's so laser focused and precise and relatively simple. For me, this is what Joji is and should be all about. It's subdued, it's kind of reserved, but it's attention grabbing and it's emotional. It's literally that one thing that makes it stand out from being just another run-of-the-mill lo-fi sad boy song. That growling bass adds that something extra, and I think sometimes it's that simple. That's all you need to just distinguish yourself. I think there are a handful of songs that have some amazing aspects to them, but I don't think they are fully fleshed out. I think the best example of this is the song Afterthought. It kind of fits its own title. It sounds like kind of an afterthought of some of the preceding songs, but what I think kind of elevates this song and makes me want to go back to it is the feature from indie pop singer Benet. I think that's how you pronounce it. She kind of rides the beat as if it was a hip-hop feature, and she brings this hip-hop swagger to it, and I think that's what makes this song unique to me. Your Man closes the album out. It continues that electronic dance house music influence that had been running towards the back end of the album, especially with that 4-on-the-floor percussion pattern. It's one of the simpler tracks on here, not just instrumentally but lyrically, but it's definitely a surprising way for Joji to end this kind of album. I do think that NECTAR is a progression and more of an ambitious project than the previous one. I just think that some of the creases may need ironing out, and I think this album would have benefited from being maybe about 10 minutes shorter, maybe just cut out a couple of tracks. But there are definitely a handful of amazing tracks that I'm going to be returning to. I think this, again, the strongest thing that this album has going for it and that Joji has going for his sound, and why I think he's going to get better and better and better, is his focus and his commitment to a style. Those are my thoughts on the album. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and dong the bell, and I shall see you next time.